All right, everybody, welcome into this week's edition of our Bulls video mailbag. As usual, we thank you for your questions. We get so many great submissions. We usually narrow it down to 4. We've got a little wrinkle. We've got 5 this week, but that's because the first 2, as you'll see, are slightly similar, but with some different slight variations. All right, so the first of the 2-part question comes from @𝗦𝗍𝗍. With the addition of Josh Giddey and his game, do you see Coby White as more of a 2-guard fit, and he and Giddey can work on a complementary game for each other to help play style of the Bulls in the court? I think Coby is a great shooter and has adjusted his game every year with the Bulls. The second part to this question that is similar is from Chris Bernardo 118. If you were Coby White, wouldn't you push to be moved this offseason? You've shared the cap restrictions with his next deal. Also, the front office has never believed in Coby as a ball-dominant first option. No playoffs and regression this year doesn't help. Any sign of internal frustration? All right, we got a lot to unpack here. As far as no playoffs, let's start there. Don't count the Bulls out yet. It could get hot in the play-in tournament. I'm not expecting that, but it's a possibility. As far as regression, I assume you mean the team, not Coby. I think Coby's actually played very well. And as far as that first question, that strikes a very good point. Change has defined Coby White's tenure in the Bulls. It does seem like every year he has been here, he has been asked to perform a different task. I give Coby White a lot of credit for navigating those challenging circumstances. And yes, in his mind, he put a lot of work in last season to become the lead option, the main playmaker, had the ball in his hands a lot. His minutes were at a career high. His usage rate were at a career high. And what happens? The Bulls trade for Josh Giddey. So any signs of frustration? I think privately Coby has been frustrated at times, but it's been private. I will say 3 things about Coby White. He is totally a team and organizational first guy. He is a fantastic teammate and has welcomed Josh Giddey with open arms. In fact, was one of the first people to reach out to him. And number 3, he always looks inward to try to tackle any challenges that come his way. So what was the challenge this season? Yes, learning to play with Josh Giddey, a ball-dominant guard, and to go back to that off-the-ball role. As to the second question's point, Coby White is a fantastic shooter. In fact, he's at a career high from 3-point attempts this year, and his percentage is near his career high. So you got to give him a lot of credit for kind of, reinventing himself every year. But will he ask for a trade this offseason? I don't know the answer to that yet. What I do know is I've mentioned many times, he's restricted to resign at his cap figure of 140% what he's making. Anyone can tell you that he's outplayed that contract, so will the Bulls get proactive and maybe try to shop him? Will Coby and his representative ask for a new change of scenery? Well, we'll have to wait and see. What I will tell you is that Coby, again, is not one to make waves. He has long embraced this franchise, this city, this organization. He's also the last holdover now that Zach LaVine has been traded to Sacramento from the roster that 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗏 inherited. So stay tuned on all, but both these questions strike to some very key points for the Bulls moving forward. All right, our next question comes from @𝗭𝗍_Bulls, which means just another year, Chicago Bulls. Yeah, just another year. KCJ Hoop, do the Chicago Bulls view Patrick Williams strictly as the 6th man now, or do they still have hopes for Patrick Williams and 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Buzelis as a starting tandem at forward? We got a similar variation of this question from our guy, Chicago Swingman. We opted for this one. Yeah, I mean, ideally, especially with Patrick Williams signed for 5 years, you want to see these 2 guys starting together. Now, Chicago Swingman asked, has 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Buzelis established himself as a starter? I do think when Patrick Williams returns, which is on track for one of the 2 games in Florida, barring a setback, that you will see Patrick Williams back to that reserve role and 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Buzelis remaining as a starter. But yes, in the future, ideally, you need to see both these players starting. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Buzelis, as everybody knows, is the future of this franchise. And Patrick Williams was supposed to be the future of the franchise when he signed a 5-year, $90 million deal. He has underperformed and been injured this season, so that's a problem. But yes, ultimately, you'd like to see those 2 guys starting. I don't think it's going to happen much the stretch run of this season, but moving into next season, it's a scenario that the Bulls need to see. All right, our next question comes from @JMarcus813. If this is a rebuild in addition to a draft that has some pretty marquee names at the top, why wouldn't the Bulls be playing for that draft slot as opposed to fighting for mediocrity as a play-in team? I think we ask either Billy Donovan or the few times we get to talk to the front office this question every time, every day. It's a storyline you can write or talk about any day of the week. The Bulls have been consistent since media day on this topic. I personally don't agree with it. I probably would lean towards the draft lottery odds, improving those that this question seems to imply. But the Bulls believe that, the integrity of competition is important. They believe that developing winning habits is important, especially for a younger team. And I will say the one aspect to this that is legitimate is, right now, obviously with 𝗵𝗁ci Buzelis playing more minutes, the Bulls staying in the play-in race, that can't be a bad thing because 𝗵𝗁ci Buzelis is one of the people that is driving that play-in push. There are times that Billy Donovan leans on veterans, but younger players are getting longer looks and they're still keeping that 10th play-in spot. They're also really not doing it by playing great basketball. I mean, the Bulls are 2-8 in their last 10 games, but maintaining that 2 or 2.5 game lead over the Nets and 76ers as of this taping. We'll see how that plays out down the stretch, but it's been clear management and coaching staff's focus is, we'll deal with the draft lottery when that comes. Right now, the focus is on trying to develop winning habits and honoring the integrity of competition. All right, our last question for this week comes from @Tony_B. AK seems too focused on vets and young players with experience rather than draft picks as a way to improve the team. Without them now having full control of their draft picks, is there any indication AK might use those draft picks to target an established star player? My sense is no, for multiple reasons. They don't really have a lot of tradable assets. Obviously, as you mentioned, they have control of their first-round picks moving forward, but they're not pairing that with, say, a Zach LaVine anymore because Zach LaVine is gone. You could maybe see what the market is for 𝗵𝗀 Vucevic with maybe a future first-round pick, but that's not my sense of how management is going to be approaching this rebuild situation. They've tried that scenario, obviously, in which they cashed in first-round picks to make bold moves like the acquisition of 𝗵𝗀 Vucevic, like the sign and trade acquisition of DeMar DeRozan. This right now seems like it's a rebuild that is centered on first-round draft picks. That's why I keep maintaining you've got to hit on these first-round draft picks. And yes, a higher draft positioning would be better for that. So we'll see how the draft lottery plays out, but I do not see them cashing in first-round picks this summer in terms of trade situations. So that'll do it for this week's questions and this week's edition of the Bulls Video Mailbag. Again, we thank you for all your questions, and we'll catch you next time.